Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke and I am so glad you're here. This is my new platform. A lot of you know me from the radio platform, but the podcast is a new platform for me that I'm really enjoying. And it's been fun. I get to talk with the best minds in the natural products industry. I also get to talk to people outside the industry, professional athletes and entertainers and kind of people in the know that we want to know more about behind the curtain. I'm going to interview them as well. My feeling and my philosophy is everybody has something to share, something to, give us, some information that we may learn from, some of those aha moments, or maybe bring you a friendly reminder of something you used to know, but you forgot. So I think you're going to really enjoy this today. And I think one of the things that we have to remember is that as we are getting healthier, as we are getting smarter to our own knowledge banks, I think we are going to start noticing that there's a lot of things that we still have to learn. And a lot of us, we may think that we know a lot, but I think sometimes we get a little realization that we may not know as much as we thought we did. So always stay in school. Always stay with your ears and your hearts open. And hopefully this platform, having these amazing guests, will bring some of that information to you. Today, I'm going to be talking with Kevin English. I'm sure you have seen him and heard him in the industry. He's been in the industry for well over a decade and living the life, walking the walk, talking the talk. And I had the pleasure of doing his podcast recently. And I wanted to return the favor because I think he has a lot of great information to share. So help me introduce my guest today. Give him a great welcome. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to have another fun conversation with you.
I think it's going to be fun. I really do. You really sparked my interest, and I had so much fun doing your show. And you were very, very thorough, and you were very dynamic. And I just think that that's the information we want out. That's the energy we want to be putting out there. So thank you for that, and thank you for what you do.
Yeah, 100%. Well, like you can tell I'm very passionate about these topics and the subject. We had such a great conversation the first time. Looking forward to round two here. Let's go.
Talk a little bit about, if you will, describe where you are in your health food natural products journey right now and where you like to spend most of your mental and physical time.
Yeah. So today I'm 61 years old and I like to tell people I'm as fit, lean, strong, healthy, capable as I've ever been in my life. In fact, I'm on this mission to make my 60s the best decade of my life. And in order to do that, certain things are going to have to be true. And I mean that in a holistic sense, but from the physical sense, the world I primarily spend my time in nutrition and personal trainer, just the exercise, nutrition, mindset, all of that. All of that has to be on point I feel like that's the foundation for living a healthy life or healthy aging. So I spend most of my time working on myself personally, on my physical body. I'm very conscious about my food. I think of food as fuel, as we discussed, I think a little bit when you were on my show. We talked a little bit. I view food, I have a sacred relationship with my food. My food becomes me. It becomes my thoughts. I think that in our modern society, we become very removed and distant from our food. And, with all the hyper palatable, ultra processed foods out there, that makes that disconnection even bigger. So I'm very aware of the foods that I'm eating. I'm very aware of how that affects my mood, my energy, and just how I show up in the world. I love to spend time in the gym, and I'm one of those weirdos that actually does love to get up early in the morning, go to the gym and work out. But what I really love is what it does for me. I have this sacred relationship with my physicality, with my body. It allows me, this is how I interact physically with the world around me. And I like to tell my audience, when you are strong and capable as you age, the world is bigger, it's larger. And conversely, when you are weak or when you are unhealthy, when we become, yes, metabolically damaged, our bodies, the world gets smaller and smaller. And I think all of us in our age demographic can certainly see that. We have aging parents. Maybe they're aging spectacular, maybe less spectacularly, but certainly us in this age demographic, and I'm primarily talking to people in their 50s and 60s. This is a time, there's no reason that somebody in this age demographic couldn't be as healthy, strong, fit, lean, whatever they want, right, physically, in their whole entire life, right? So that's how I spend my time. That's what really lights me up. And then, of course, all the mindset and other work that goes along with the actual eating healthy foods and exercising and fun stuff like that.
And I know, and thank you. And I know that you spend a lot of time with people in the over 50 category.
Mm-hmm.
And do you find that sharing this philosophy, this heartfelt philosophy of yours, is something that they're able to grasp onto? Do they relate? Do they understand? Do they want it as well? And do they feel like it's something they can do? Because, many of us are burdened with past failures in our lives,
Sure.
Not doing a diet, not living to our New Year's resolution, falling off the wagon and running into the woods, those things that we have a tendency to do. Do you find that as you're working with these people, as they see you as this vibrant person, do you think it gives them hope that they could have it as well?
I certainly hope so. And you have very succinctly put your finger right on the problem. So nobody rolls into their 50s and 60s, let's say overweight, maybe high cholesterol, high blood pressure, pre-diabetes or full-blown diabetes, without having addressed that probably at multiple times throughout their life, maybe even continuously. We see people in their 50s and 60s that have been dieting for decades. And, this routine, right? They gain 30 pounds, they lose 30 pounds, they gain 40 pounds, they lose 20 pounds, just that back and forth and back and forth. And that can be really, really disheartening, very discouraging. And statistics tell us that 95% of people who lose an appreciable amount of weight, meaning over 20 pounds of weight, will gain every last bit of that back over a long enough time horizon. I think it's over 2 years or 5 years, something like that. And that is just dismal. If you think about the weight loss industry, I guess it's great if you're one of these companies that is making money off of repeat customers, but it is a dismal statistic. I can't think of any other profession where a 6%, a 10% success rate long-term is fabulous, but it would be in this market. The reason I bring that up is because I believe that the secret to long-term success, because look, anybody can get somebody who's dedicated and motivated and has willpower to drop 20 pounds. Yep. We can do that. And we can even do it fairly quickly. But that's not hard. That's not tricky. What is tricky is having somebody say, we'll lose 20 pounds as an example, lose 20 pounds, build some muscle, and then maintain that for the rest of their life. So what's the secret? What do these 5% or less than 5% of people know that 95% of the people don't know? I think it's passion. I think it's learning to fall in love with the process of becoming this healthy person. And that, Jeff, I tell you what, I would be a millionaire if I could bottle that, what I have, and give it to my clients. I'd be filthy rich. I'd be taking I'd still be doing this podcast, but I'd be doing it from probably my hut in Tahiti. Maybe you and I could get on my private jet and meet face to face.
We would love that.
Right. I think that's the secret, though. I think you very succinctly said, hey, what is it? If people that have had, this, I've tried everything. I hear that all the time. I've tried everything and nothing's worked. And there's this very fatalistic attitude that comes to that. But what if you just became that person that fell in love with the process of becoming this lean, strong, healthy, capable human being? And that is a much bigger conversation than, hey, eat this food and do this workout. And we're going to do this for the next 90 days. And there you go. Your 20 pounds are lost. Let's high five. And I won't see you again until next year this time, right? So two different conversations.
I think also, and to your point, passion, absolutely, I think is necessary. But I think there is this mentality that makes a diet or a new eating program or going to the gym a temporary thing that you're doing. It's like a class that you take for like a term. And after it, you're done. And if you're not done, you're not done. But if you're done, then you're like, okay, now I can cross that off. I did it. But they don't realize that the journey begins as you've arrived at where you were trying to go, even though you should really try to maybe learn, to your point, how to embrace the journey to get there. which I think is wonderful. But I also think that a lot of times we have a tendency to seize the finality of something where, it's like we're baking a cake and it's halfway done and we're like, oh, that's good enough. And we take it out, we just start eating that cake. It's hot, but we're loving it. It's good, but it never got to its full potential. And we just enjoyed it, which is good because, you can enjoy your journey on your way to get there, because if you're seeing results, that should be so overwhelmingly celebrated, because most people have not had those results. So maybe they don't know how to celebrate it. Maybe they don't realize that that's just the baby steps to getting to the hurdles, So I'm not really sure, but I think that we think of it as a temporary thing.
We do. If you think about the way the diet culture works, is basically, these pounds have just insidiously creeped back onto my body. I have to go on another diet. So first of all, we've set up this that we already know in our mind. This is an odious task, something that we don't want to do.
Exactly.
So what do? We restrict calories. We eat nothing but salads, and maybe we don't like salads, but we're tough. We grind through it. We stay motivated somehow, some way. We lose those 20 pounds. And at the end of it, we pat ourselves on the back, say, okay, good job. And then we go back to doing what we were before, expecting that that's going to last. And we all know how that ends. It doesn't work out well, as opposed to, what if I stopped restrictive mentality? Because who wants to eat low calories or just nothing but salads for the rest of their life? That I certainly wouldn't. That sounds horrible. I want to eat a lot of food. I want to eat a variety of foods. So how then it's incumbent upon us then to learn, how do we do that? How do we structure food so that it's something that we can sustain for the rest of our life? I like to tell people, look, if you want permanent change, you're going to have to make permanent changes. Now that is not so easy to sell. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to get 20 pounds off you in 30 days. I'll make a bunch of money. If I tell you, hey, I'm going to get 20 pounds off you in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. But the trade-off is I'm going to teach you this framework where you'll be able to maintain that and enjoy maintaining that for the rest of your life. Well, that's a different conversation, but it's also a tougher sell, because we're very much an instant gratification culture. And I put myself in that same bucket as well. Amazon has taught me I want it and I want it now.
Yep.
And that's the way we think about things like body composition or health. And it's a tough thing, right? I like to tell people that, I'm not anti-diet, but without getting too far in the weeds, you should be healthy enough. There's a lot of people starting diets that have no business starting a diet. They're just in a metabolically poor place to start dieting, and they're doomed from the start. And then the other half of that is, what's your diet exit plan? Okay, let's say you do a crash diet. What are you going to do after that? Yeah. And if the plan is just go back to what I was doing before, that's not so good, right? So
that's exactly it. And we want to be able to close the door, and we want to open up the new door looking completely different,
right?
And we want to be able to just move forward and buy all new clothes, and before you know it, we've gained it back and we're in the fat clothes we were in before. But I did a radio show years ago, and it was the one that I think got, back then we didn't have emails. So it was like one of the ones where it was crazy. It was just like nuts. It was letters and, snail mail and all that. But I had a lady, she wrote me a letter and she said, I'm starting a new diet in January. So I was doing the radio show and she called up and she said, I did a diet and I exercised, but I only lost 5 pounds in January. And I was happy for her. I said, that's great. Yeah. That means in 10 months you can lose 50. Right. So I'm seeing this. She's not seeing that. She is not having any part of that. She is depressed because she lost 5 pounds. She wanted to lose like 30. Mm-hmm. So I said, I said, try something for me and then just tune in next week and give me a call and let everybody know. I said, go to the grocery store. When you get to the grocery store, go to the baking aisle and pick up a 5-pound bag of sugar, put it in your arm and carry it around the entire time you're shopping. So nobody knew where I was going with this. So the next week, it was a Saturday show. I said, call me on my Saturday show. So she called me on the Saturday show and I said, how was it? And she said, it was awful. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, that bag was so heavy. And I said, it's only 5 pounds. That's nothing. Yeah. Isn't that what you said? 5 pounds was nothing. She goes, after like 10 minutes, I have to set it down in the wagon. I said, really? I said, you should be happy I didn't tell you to pick up 10 pounds. I said, so what did this teach you? She said, it taught me that 5 pounds is a lot and I should be happy with myself that I did that and try to match it the next month. So that way I'm taking 2 5-pound bags off my body. And it was just a realization. I got more letters, more phone calls on that than anything else. That people are like, that makes so much sense. Because you've seen those things where they show 5 pounds of fat.
5 pounds of fat, 5 pounds of muscle, and the muscle looks like this, 5 pounds literally, and the 5 pounds of fat looks like this.
Yeah. But we want it all. And to your point, we want it to be fast because we can't realize that it took forever to get here. And, with the things going on in the world around us, like we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not taking care of the planet. Organic used to be the way to go. It's not anymore. Now it's regenerative because we need to take care of the soil and the crop. And that's the company that I'm with Kokora, which is fantastic. And I love that idea. But now we're teaching about planet wellness and planet health as well as our body health. So there's a lot for people to learn. And I think some people get overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I think that you're absolutely right. Small steps celebrate small wins, and that's the path for success. I can't remember the exact saying. When hours ago, the man who loves walking will get to his destination further than the man who just loves his destination. But yeah, if you, again, going back to that, how do I become a person and maybe I don't fall in love with every single healthy food choice or every single workout I do, but I'm becoming this person who is a healthy person. I love the concept of, when you start to think about mindset, I love the concept of being your future self today. So whatever that looks like for you, well, okay, so I want to be fit, lean, strong, healthy, capable. What would a fit, lean, strong, healthy, capable person do? Well, they would probably prioritize their health. They would probably rearrange their schedule. They would probably block off time to work out and time to shop and shop mindfully and to eat mindfully. They would probably have a mindset that they didn't look at this as an odious task, but rather they looked at this as something that should be enjoyed. So becoming your future self today, and not delaying, not waiting, and kind of putting yourself into that mindset. It's a little bit woo-woo, but I really like that concept, and it works for anything, right? If you want financial success, if you want relationship success, if you want fitness success, again, just that future state, become it now. Start to adopt the mindset of the person that is that thing today.
It's that proactive side that a lot of us don't use. And, and I think the reason we don't is, once again, is our own, wanting the immediacy of everything to happen and the impatience of what's going on out there. Because, and I would say a lot more of the younger people today are probably more impatient than the people of I guess, our group. I'm older than you, but our group. And I think we have more patience. But I mean, I talk to people and I'll do lectures with them and they're like, are you serious? It may take like 3 months to really start seeing something. And I'm like, dude, you didn't get like this overnight.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but they're in once again, the Amazon state of mind. Sure. They're in the overnight, next day delivery state of mind. And I'm like, if you really want this, you got to put in the time. But you got to want to put in the time.
Got to want to put in the time. That's it.
You don't want the end result.
Yeah. Nobody's going to grit or motivate or white knuckle their way for the rest of their life. You're just not. Nope. I talk about motivation and determination as wells. And they've got a little bit of motivation in the bottom of the motivation well. You got a little bit of discipline in the bottom of the discipline well. And you need to be judicious in how much you dip out of that well, because it'll empty very quickly. And you also have to have a method of refilling those wells from time to time, so that there's some motivation and some discipline when you need them. But if you're just if that's your plan, I'm going to be motivated, or I'm going to be disciplined for the whole rest of my life and do something I don't want to do, that's going to wear off fairly quickly. And it's not a good strategy for long-term success. I love determination. I love motivation. I think they're key parts of any long-term journey, but they should complement the mindset. And they should be used judiciously as tools and not just the sole way that you're going to make your way through this journey.
So, people that, have been listening to us so far, they know that you are a very passionate person. You embrace your mind, body, and soul. You also feed and nourish your mind, body, and soul. And you respect your mind, body, and soul. Mm-hmm. You share your beliefs and your information and everything with the people around you and the people that you counsel and train, which is amazing. You put your positivity forward, which I think is very important. I'd love to dig a little bit deeper, a little bit behind the curtain, if you will. I would love for you to talk about home life, because you've got a home life that's pretty cool. I mean, I've got horses, I've got dogs, I've got that, but would you mind talking about your dwelling, if you will, and what's crawling around the dwelling?
Sure. So I'll tell you what, I'll back all the way up, because I feel like I've come full circle. So I grew up as a small child and in Pennsylvania on a big beef cattle farm. We had chickens, so we had laying chickens, we had meat chickens, we had one dairy cow, we had a bunch of beef cows. But so that was, we had a giant garden. We canned, mom canned, she was a prepper before prepping was cool. She was canning all those vegetables and fruits. We had an orchard. So that was my upbringing. That's what I thought was normal. Then, of course, growing up, went off to school and into urban life, and I went away from all of that. And so, in the last few years here, my dad's out here in southeastern North Carolina. He owns a little bit of property, and we bought 3 acres of his, and had a little tiny structure on it. We thought, well, this would just be a fun place for us to go play farmer on the weekends. We were living at the beach. I mean, we lived on the beach at the time. And we started spending our weekends out here on the farm. And so we're just a little dirt road down here, and Dad's over on one side of the dirt road. We got our little tiny farm over on the other side of the road. And we really enjoyed spending our time here. Well, long story short, we live here full time. We took that tiny structure that my wife had made beautiful and actually expanded on, and we ended up turning that into a duplex. We got 2 of my adult kids are there, my daughter and my son. So we're their landlords basically, but they're right down the road from us.
Cool.
And we built another big, beautiful house. But so Dad's got 15 acres over on the other side of us. He's got these llamas. We've got llamas in the llama barn over there. And I've got all these raised beds. We've got dogs. We've got, I think I told you in my podcast, I've got like 25 blueberry plants out here, which are going crazy. We're recording this in mid-June, and my blueberries are going nuts.
Love it.
But I've got my chickens, so I've got all of this beautiful compost on my farm. So these llamas actually are not given any heartworm medicine or anything like that. And if you're going to do that, if you know the cycle of that, you've got to get that poop up off the ground, because that's where that danger is going to come in. So these pastures are clean behind these llamas every single day. Now, llamas are pretty polite. They typically will go, all of them. It's a small, I think there's 5 of them now. They all go in the same place. So it's not so bad to clean them up. They rotate pastures. So they're in a different pasture every couple of weeks. And we collect all of this llama poo, llama dung,
llama do,
and we sell some of it as well to some of the local farmers around here. Sure. But it goes into all of my gardens. So every single one of my blueberry plants that I've ever planted has been in a big old scoop of llama pure gold in there. I've also got all that straw and chicken manure that I compost, as well as we have table scraps as well. So nothing really gets wasted here. All of our produce either goes into making vegetable stock that we'll use to cook other things with, or it goes to the chickens, or it goes in our compost. So all of that's completely, we have this little tiny biodynamic farm happening here, and I absolutely love it. So I've got farm fresh eggs. I've got of course, right now, my blueberries. I've got okra and green beans and some tomatoes that they're producing right now. So just a little teeny farm out here, and I couldn't be happier. Absolutely love it.
You know, this is such an amazing feeling that you bring across, because I think everybody has something and some place and a lifestyle that they see themselves eventually doing, or maybe they're lucky enough to be doing it now. And the picture is different for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I was raised in the country around all that stuff. I moved away from it. I swear to God, I would never, ever have animals again. And now I've got 7 dogs. We've got tons of horses and all that stuff. And you can't get away from your roots. I don't care what you try.
Yeah.
And you may say it out loud that you don't want to, but I'm in Vegas right now. And I mean, if I was to move back to the Midwest, and I would have an area where I could have have raised beds and gardens and all that stuff, I would do it, you know, because I miss it. And there's parts of it, I go back to visit, I see my family, and I go play in their gardens, and, you know, they're out on the lake that we were raised on. My brother bought the house that we were raised on. So it's dirt roads and beautiful spring-fed lake, and only the people that are in the area are allowed to use the lake. And, you know, I miss that, you know, because that to me is peace of mind, peace of body. And I think that adds to your longevity. And I think if you never, ever are able to achieve those want to destinations, I think it affects you in a negative way.
I agree. Yeah, there's something about being connected to your place
Mhm.
and your special place. I think for me, just being out here in the country, again, being connected to my food, being a little closer connected to nature, that just does bring a piece that will certainly roll over when we talk about things like lifespan and health span. So how long I live certainly is where I live is impacting that, but also my quality of life. Because, like you
Mhm.
said, there's times when it's a lot of work,
Of course,
right? There
absolutely.
are times when I could just be, when I lived at the beach, we didn't have a yard. It was sand, so there wasn't any. There was no, I didn't have to worry about the pastures or the llamas or the chickens or anything. Tending the garden is constantly weeding at this time of year, uh, but I love it. There's something about being connected to that and then being rewarded with actual food and just participating in that very natural cycle is really special. So, yeah, I'm with you there.
Well, you have a relationship with people, you have a relationship with your family, you have a relationship with food. We have many different relationships in life, and people that have a relationship with their food, either the food they grow, the food they cook with, the food that they purchase, the food that they consume, if you have a strong connection to the food, then you understand the difference that it does make in both, if you choose wisely, positive ways, and if you choose
Right.
terribly. I literally had someone write me the other day. It was a podcast. We were talking about foods. And I, just for a second, I said, how many people eat a lot of their meals through the window of their car? Not thinking anything of it. And he wrote me this note and he said, it hit me really hard. And I started thinking, and I realized that every meal I've eaten for the last 2 years was served to me through the window of my
Oh
car. He
no.
goes, I don't
Yeah.
cook at home. I work so many hours. I don't eat. He's one of the CEOs at one of the hotels. He goes, I could eat there. I don't. I grab food on the way. And he goes, I swear to God. He goes, it hit me so hard that I went grocery shopping
Well,
and
good.
I brought
Yeah.
food home and I'm packing
Yeah.
my lunch. And he said, I don't know what it was. It just hit me like lightning and thunder. He goes, and I didn't realize it. And then I took a good look at myself in the mirror the next morning after my shower and I said, there it is. And he goes, I really took a deep look and I realized it was time for a change. So, sometimes people are just hanging out waiting for that little prod to kind of maybe move them in the right direction.
You never know. You
And we
never
do
know.
that. We try to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when it comes to because there's also, like you said, this guy probably wasn't even aware. He probably wasn't even thinking about it. For him, his life is all around probably efficiency, being efficient with his time, and all of the things that it would take to be an effective CEO. But when you stop and think about what should you eat, what's the best diet, what's the best way to eat? That's a very confusing, complex topic. Everybody's got a opinion. There's so many different diets out there. A lot of them are contradictory. I mean, for crying out loud, we've got vegans and carnivores now, and both in their camp saying this is the best way to eat, and all humans should eat this way, with these crazy restrictive diets. But really, what we like to try and do, I've got this concept of a pyramid, a nutrition pyramid, in order to simplify what should you eat and how should you eat in order for optimal health, optimal body composition. And the base of that pyramid is what you eat. It's not how much you eat. Let's say you want to lose 50 pounds. What you should concentrate first is not on the how much you eat, but on the what you eat.
Yep.
And there we're going to talk about, hey, let's eat whole, real foods. Let's shop the perimeter of our grocery stores. Let's get rid of as much as possible and practical all that hyper palatable food. Studies show that over 70% of Americans' diet is now processed and ultra processed food. It's not real food, it's fake food. So that's the base of that pyramid. So that's what we want to start with when we think about, okay, well, what's the best way to eat? And then next, you're probably oh yeah, well, how much I eat is next. It's not actually. And our priority, I say the first priority is what you eat, and then is how you eat. You mentioned this gentleman eating through the window of his car, eating in his car. But we
Yeah.
say, hey, let's eat mindfully. Let's eat slowly. Let's not scarf our food in between meetings wherever possible. Let's slow down and let's recognize that humans are the only creatures that eat for reasons other than hunger. We eat for all kinds of reasons. We celebrate with food, and we all know if we're cranky or sad or depressed or anxious, our food choices are different. So we are emotional eaters. So in that, how we eat is just being mindful of what state we're in, working on that as well, right? And then we talk about how much we eat. What's the appropriate amount to eat? That part's actually one of the least complicated parts, and it's probably more than you think it is if you're eating real whole foods. And here's the other thing. those highly processed foods are designed, of course, to be hyper palatable, to cause you to overeat. So it's easy to eat a whole bag of potato chips.
Easy.
But if you stop and think, a whole bag of potato chips, that's like 3 or 4 large baked potatoes. Nobody in their right mind is going to sit down and eat 3 or 4 large baked potatoes.
No.
But yet, if I said, hey, here, I bet you can't eat this whole bag of chips, I'm going to eat a whole bag of chips. I can win that bet. So it's really easy to overeat this nutrient poor, calorie dense food. But when we swap that out, flip that equation, and maybe we eat 70% whole foods and 30% processed foods, there's this satiating effect of real whole foods. If you're eating steak and sweet potatoes and broccoli and asparagus, that's going to make you fuller, feel full longer than if you just eat macaroni and cheese in one of those little frozen reheat microwave type things. So there's a lot going on when you talk about health, body composition, and what we eat. But as opposed to thinking what's the best diet or what diet should I go on, I'm a big proponent of just cleaning up what you eat, focusing on how you eat. Really, that oftentimes just kind of by itself takes care of the how much you eat. And that puts you in that healthy, lean, strong, capable camp there, just by doing those things without really worrying about all the other noise around food.
And when we get into the numbers, to your point, we create a lot of background noise, and then we drive ourselves crazy.
Yes.
And then, and some people still are trying to figure out what foods are what foods. I literally had a conversation with a lady a couple years ago, but it was really funny. And I said, keep track of the foods that you eat, but be mindful of the starchy carbohydrates that you're eating. No problem. So we met a couple weeks later. She came in one of the stores I was at. She said, I've done so good. She goes, I've gained 11 pounds. She says, but I am keeping, I was like, wow. And she goes, but I'm keeping track. She was eating macaroni and cheese and baked potatoes and pasta and rice and lots of bread. She said, because I'm trying to stay away from carbohydrates.
Oh dear.
And I'm like,
you
what do you think? What do you think a carb is? And she said, well, all of those fruits and vegetables. And I'm just like, so we had a
those are the ones you want to be eating. Yeah, come on.
So we had kind of this long conversation, and she got the light bulb aha. She was like, oh,
yeah.
And I said, let's try this way. So she's been, and I've run into her a couple times since then. It's been a couple years now, and she's very lean and very healthy, and she exercises and runs, and she embraces it like you do everything.
There you go. Yeah.
And so we always laugh about that conversation that day where she says, that was my come to Jesus moment day. And she says, where my eyes were open and I saw for the very first time. She makes it very elaborate. But it was a misunderstanding. So do we need to maybe reteach what foods are what foods? Maybe we need a refresher course in that for people.
Yeah. You got your proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and really 2 of those are essential. You'll die if you don't get them. The other, you'll just live miserably if you don't get them, in my opinion. So got to have fats, got to have protein, or you will in fact die. Proteins are actually non-essential, but in my book, they're kind of essential. I think it'd be miserable to go my whole life personally without eating another carb. But not all carbs are created equal, right? A sweet potato and a Pop-Tart are 2 very, very different foods, and we just need to be mindful of that. Yeah. But again, even if you worried less about that, more about whole foods, that kind of takes care of itself, right? So if you're not eating the macaroni and the breads and the pastas and all these things, or you're actually, I don't want to say any food's off limit, but if you were eating them as indulgences or sparingly, so you're not taking, if you love pasta, then have pasta, but just keep in mind that you just want to have that occasionally as opposed to for every other meal, something like that.
And realize that food around the world is not all the same as well.
Right.
Because if you can eat bread in Italy and not have any digestive gastric problems, you come here and you can't tolerate baked goods, that's different around the world as well. And the mentalities are different. Yeah. You go to China, and if you order food, over here, we get massive amounts of protein and little bits of vegetables. Over there, you get massive amounts of vegetables and small amount of the protein and small amount of the rice. So we flip the switch a lot of times because, we do what we want to do. We hear what we want to hear. and we process what we want to process, and most of it is just based on our own addictions and our own cravings and things like that. And
Or
and and
family
I
history as well, right? A
oh,
lot of us grew up with, food is comfort, food is family tradition, it's ethnic. There's a lot. I mean, food is a vastly complex landscape for humans,
mhm.
where it's not for other animals. But yeah, that's a very good point.
you know Question before we run out of time. I was going to ask you about your perception. Do you feel that the natural product industry itself, that means supplements and herbs and the mentality that goes with it, the available science and PubMed and the new delivery systems and all that, do you feel we're going in the right direction?
I do. I think there's a groundswell, and I don't know if you want to get political here, but with RFK Jr., with Casey Means, people like this, we have the Food Babe on social media, with some of these people with very large platforms having these, whether you agree with their policies or not, but having
True.
these very holistic health philosophies. I am encouraged by that. So I do think that politically, we there is more awareness than any time in my life that I'm aware of around these issues of real whole food nutrition. When we start to move into supplements, that's just a vast world. But I'm really excited about where we're going with that intersection of ancestral knowledge and wisdom around plants and food and technology. Like you said, how can I take something from nature, make it convenient, but still really healthy, still getting the majority, if not all, the majority of the health benefits for this? How can I get this out to the masses? And how can we improve health through this combination of returning to what our ancestors just naturally natively knew, and new technology, new ways of delivery? So I'm naturally wired to be optimistic anyway. I'm really optimistic about the future of human health. I do think that there's this groundswell of interest in being healthy. I think that there are, like I said, there are people with huge platforms now. Of course, social media is a reality
Of
here
course.
in this day and age. But you have all your Hubermans, etc., out there on the podcast land. You've got these really big fitness influencers that have these very large platforms now. Some of them, unfortunately, maybe not giving the greatest information, but there are others out there with really solid information. And I do feel like this is becoming that we're becoming more aware that natural health, natural remedies are, especially those that have been with us for many generations, for thousands of years in some cases, are worth a second look. They didn't last. Some herbal treatment didn't last for 1,000 years because it was ineffective. So I'm optimistic. I'm encouraged. I think that a lot of the natural foods, a lot of the whole foods, um, I'm encouraged with that push. I hope to see more of that in the future.
I love it because I think I run parallel with that as well. And of course I always hope, and I try to be an eternal optimist, and gets me in trouble sometimes, but
Right.
I can't change who I am. And that's just my personality, that I always hope for the best in things and people, and I
Mhm.
hope for the best in all of that. Um, how do people get a hold of you? Talk a little bit, just quickly, let them know how to listen to your podcast.
Yeah. So my podcast is the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. So you can find that on any platform that whatever you're listening to this on, you can find me there. So if you are in fact over 50 and you're interested in health and wellness, I'm your guy. Yeah.
I love it. Real quick, leave everybody with a thought for the day.
Yeah, I would say that you're not too old and it's not too late. I want you to understand that whatever you want health wise, whatever you want, say dream body wise or body composition wise, you can have that. It's just a matter, it's mindset first, and then just this integrating slowly these foundational principles and adopting that lifestyle. But whatever you want, it's it's up to you. You're responsible. You can make that happen. Find a mentor, find somebody that can lead you, has a framework that's not losing 50 pounds in 3 months, but rather somebody who has got a framework for optimizing your health to get you where you want to go.
I love it. Kevin, I thank you so much. Will you come back and see me again?
It'd be my pleasure, Jeff, anytime.
I'd love to have you back again. I love your energy. I love your philosophy. I love your platform. And you really impressed me when we spoke on your show, and I couldn't wait to have you on mine.
Right
So
on.
I thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoyed this today. Remember, go to my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com, tap on the Honest Health logo, and it'll take you to Spotify for the audio version, the one that I recommend when you're driving. And then if you want to click on the YouTube, you can watch the interviews there as well. Make sure to subscribe, do a like, do a share, do them all. It's all new for me. We never did that with radio. So now we're sharing and subscribing.
Yep.
So please do that and bring your friends. Bring the people you love, bring the people you don't like. Maybe you'll like them more when they get healthier. So bring everybody along, because this platform is about honest, truthful information, to the point, no fluff, just wonderful ideals, wonderful information and tips from the best minds in the industry and outside the industry as well. I thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
My
and
pleasure.
you guys have a wonderful day. Be well, everyone. God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.